Hello and welcome to The Life You're Made For. I'm your host, Dr. Heather Pinney. Often our world feels reactive, confusing, and chaotic. On this show, we're going to slow down together. Take a breath, listen, and learn. We'll be joined in conversations with influential thinkers who will help us make new connections, understand our unique potential, check the beliefs we hold, and learn how to overcome unexpected challenges. I know that each and every one of us holds our own inner clarity, confidence, and courage, what I call 3C living and leading. So let's go after it together. I'm cheering you on. Welcome. I'm so excited to have two colleagues and now what I call two very good old friends of mine, Ryan Ross and Cody Vermillion. Good to see you guys. Thanks so much for joining me on the show today.
So happy to be here with you.
We go back a ways, don't we? We've been through quite a bit. As I was thinking about talking with you today, I was like, we've gone through like a book launch, several book launches. We've gone through you opening your own nonprofit and designing your own marketing firm. I mean, all of these things that I'm so excited to talk to you about, not only as a coach and a colleague, but also as an entrepreneur and really as a fellow creative, because I think we've all decided that the fourth C is creative, right?
Amen.
So we're going to jump. Yeah, don't we? I mean, we've all kind of claimed that. And I think I love what creativity does. And particularly as we look at everything from creating art to Ryan, we were just talking about you going surfing, like having a creative lifestyle that allows you to do that, to our work and being able to step into creative spaces for how we design our work, our play, and everything. And there's all these beautiful places they intersect and weave into, and sometimes get a little messy. So I guess today I want to step into, we're starting a series on why we believe what we believe. So I want to start there. And I want you all to, each of you, share a little bit about who you are, what you do, and give me one core belief that you live with day in and day out.
Ryan, you go ahead.
Well, I love that you're bringing up the why we believe what we believe. I think as humans, sometimes we put the conversation of faith or belief, and then we institutionalize those words and call it religion, but we put those out here and but they're deeply human. I think everyone we know, everyone who's walking the streets in whatever part of the world, whatever part of the country, and whatever color of race, creed, or political party, everyone is deeply faithful. They have faith. They have beliefs. They wake up in the morning and say, this is my purpose, this is what I'm going to do today. This is what I believe is valuable. It's just deeply human. All of us have this faith piece that's just deeply human. And when we remember that, I think we can all come together across whatever aisle that is talking about. So I think when I wake up in the morning, I think my deepest belief starts with the morning of saying, I say God, and I say, here I am. What's on the plate today, or what is the intention of my life today? And it begins with the first sounds I hear, which is usually our kids, and we're waking them up in the chaos of the morning and getting them ready for school. But there's I think the core belief is that I can be connected with an intentionality that is driven by my faith every day. And that intentionality gives our lives purpose. That's probably a deeply human piece, rather than I'm also a pastor and I'm also a creative of an LLC with Cody. And but first and foremost is that waking up to faith and being a part of a journey every day.
Love that. And what a relief too, right? That the world isn't all on our own shoulders. We buy into that false belief that somehow we got to make it all work on our own. But when we remember that there is a power beyond ourselves that is so much smarter and wiser and more loving than us, we get to actually engage with that and step into that. I mean, to me, that's a major sigh of relief.
Absolutely, Heather. And sometimes you think that once you gain that clarity, that confidence, that courage, and that creativity, then it's all on you to charge it and to make it happen.
Yeah.
And I think this core belief or having faith in life realizes that you're cooperating to bring about that clarity, confidence, courage, and creativity in your own unique way. And that cooperation piece, maybe that's the fifth C that we're talking about right here with faith. That every day you're not on your own journey. You're welcomed in to be a part of the journey. In walking with a God who has a plan for your life. That's what I wake up with. And I love it. Amen. It's a gift.
Love it. Cody, what about you?
Yeah. So, like Ryan mentioned, we have an LLC, but we also have a nonprofit called Uncommon Good. And so we're the pastors of Uncommon Good, and we're the founders of Uncommon Creative, which are two separate entities that exist to do different things, but it all draws from this creative God that we serve, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm a father of three. I've got three young kids in elementary age and preschool age, and my wife, who's been on your podcast before, she's a very creative person. So when you say the word creative as the fourth C, I'm like, yeah, she's super creative. Her whole podcast is about that. And I consider myself a creative person, not just in the, graphic design and audio. I'm also a musician. And so creativity is a huge part of my life. A deeply held belief for me would be that everyone is welcome at the table of Jesus, that there's no prerequisite. There's no you're in, you're out kind of thing. Everybody is welcome. And the reason that I have that deeply held belief is that because I believe for me, and this is a quote that's attributed often to Billy Graham, is that our job is to love, and God's job is to take care of the rest, right? That's a loose quote. Our job is to love the people that come into our lives. And so in loving everybody that comes into our lives, I believe that Jesus welcomes all to the table, so I should do the same thing.
Love that. Yep. This is probably why we've been all partnering for the last several years together, because there is no secret club, is there? And nor do we have any superiority on whether we have a secret, the corner market on any kind of the mystery of something as large as a creator or a God or anything like this, a divine presence. We don't have the secret sauce for all of that, but we do have a belief that says we get to show up with confidence. We get to show up with clarity. We get to show up with courage. We get to show up with all three of those and step into it. And in that process, our lives are busy enough just trying to figure that piece out. Our goal is to step into what you said, Cody, of just loving people well. And I think in my solo podcast, I said that too. My whole beliefs are based on love God, love people, period. It's just it. It's super simple. We don't have to get lost in it, nor do we have to try and convince anyone of it. But it's that reality of my life is better and richer because I believe in something beyond myself, which is, I also love the 12 steps because the first one is like, really acknowledge you have a problem. The second one is acknowledge there's a higher power. And I'm like, good heavens, I live off that. That's how I open up my day of like, oh, okay, I am a problem. And I don't have to work this all out on my own, but I want to have the humility to say, I am the issue. Now I have a higher power that's going to help me become something greater than I can even dare to even hope, ask, or imagine. It's beyond something that I even know how to ask for, but I am so thrilled that I have something bigger out there that is supporting who I am and what I do.
That is such a positive, great thing. I think most people wake up in the morning with so many to-dos on their back, on their lists. And then they look in the mirror as they prepare for the day and they hear all the self-limiting beliefs or negative beliefs about themselves. And oftentimes they project that upon whatever religious experience they had as a God who sees them in the same negative way that they then see themselves. So they don't, many people wouldn't have the need for more negative voices that see themselves in such a way, right?
Oh,
But
totally.
the way you phrase it, Heather, is that we are, and Cody talked about the invitation where everyone's at the table. I think what faith gives you the fuel to do is that you're welcomed into a journey to live the life you are made for. And what I love, ever since you came out with that title, the word made is an intentionality, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not the life you were born for. Everyone's born, and
Yep.
you could have used that phrase.
Mm-hmm.
But what I love is that the life you're made for actually had intentionality from a creator who, when that creator sees you in the morning, doesn't say the negative voices that you may hear in the mirror that you're saying to yourself, but it's a welcome to cooperate into the life you're made for. And everyone's invited in that. Like, even I love that Jesus ends his time with a big story about everyone being invited to a banquet. Most people were too busy, or they had other things going on, and they denied the invitation. So he just kept inviting out to everyone, and welcomed them to say, hey, do you want to become a part of this celebration of life? And I love how he begins with a party, at turning water into wine for everyone, and it ends with a party where everyone's invited. Everyone's invited to cooperate with this intentionality of life that you're made for. So good. Good book. You wrote a good book, Heather.
Oh, thank you, my friend. Well, that's why I named the show this, right? The life we're made for. And that's why I bring people on who have like an awareness and a sensitivity of, I think I'm made for more. And, Cody,
that whisper.
Yeah. Cody, you and I have had such deep conversations. I remember this when we first met. You're like, you like Need to Breathe? Do you remember that conversation? I go, yeah, I love Need to Breathe. And you were all over my YouTube. And I'm like, you could see that I was watching all these videos on Need to Breathe. And as you're saying, you're a musician. I guess I just want to go there and say, what was it in you that said, I am made for more? And more importantly, how did you hang on to that?
Yeah. Well, I'll do a funny quote that I heard recently. I think it was from a comedian, but I'll apply it to music in this way. That's when you go into something like comedy or music, and you write music and you make music, you have to kind of think like, you have to kind of like feel a little delusional in the sense of like, this is pretty good. Like, people are going to like this. You have to kind of just like convince yourself until like people actually do like it. So that's kind of like that's the funny side of the fuel behind why you keep doing it is just this drive to say like, I actually do think that I have something of value to bring to the world.
Yeah.
I actually do have something to say and some creativity to bring. And it's not all just from me. I believe that it comes from our creative God. And if it does come from that creative God and I have this drive to do something with it, then I have a responsibility to bring that creativity, whether it's music, whether it's, doing things with our faith-based nonprofit or doing things with clients with creative work. I have a responsibility to move forward and keep using those skills, those gifts, those that drive to bring something good into the world. Yeah.
I love that. Ryan, do you have something to add?
No, I just love hearing Cody say that. And I think one of the coolest things is it's not just Cody. I get to see Cody wearing all these hats that he wears. I see him oftentimes in Zoom meetings like this with clients and talking about websites and social media and marketing. But then I also get to see Cody with his guitar and singing. What I love, Cody, is that we're just not all welcomed into bringing good into the world, but unique good that only you can bring. Cody has a light that only Cody shines, right? Yeah. Heather, you are the same exact way.
So are you, Ryan.
It sparks others to live their unique good. And so, it was just fun hearing you say all that, Cody.
Yeah.
Well, now you have to say something about what, same question for you.
Agreed. Thank you, Cody. I was going to pivot right over there.
Wait a minute. I did. Wait, what?
What is your unique spark?
Isn't it funny that it's so easy to see it in others than maybe see it in yourself at times? And
Oh yeah.
that's the reality. It's a hard question. I'll tell you why. It's just so much better to look out than to look in. But recently, over the last few years, where we were starting, like, how do we redo church is what we did with Uncommon Good. And how do we redo that? And some of when you look at the core beliefs of what is a church for everyone, not just what is a church for a certain amount of people who like a certain amount of music, dress a certain way. But you do end up looking at yourself. And in that process too, Cody and I are figuring out all kinds of ways to how can we support our families financially while we're doing this just very organic expression of revisited church, not deconstructed, but reconstructed, revisited church. And you do have to answer questions in job interviews about your uniqueness, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like creativity or seeing things in different way has always been a unique, I guess, gift that God has given me in my certain places. And it can honestly be like, I'm a holy frustration to people at times, right? Well, what if we did this? What if we did this differently? And what if we went around this side and did something differently? I think that the spark of what gives me life is seeing things in new ways. My wife makes fun of me that, and so do my kids. Like, we love taking different ways home all the time from school. One, it gets your kids geographically grounded in your city that they could find their way home. But it's so fun. And I guess its approach to my life that's unique is like, we're on our way home. I don't want to take the same way home every day. So we use a map and we take different things that we call shortcuts, which are absolute long cuts, and they take a longer way home. But I love the life of that. Yeah. So I think that would be the unique spark, is how can we find another way to go where we're going in a way that brings life and doesn't feel like a rut. And I think that's a really good view, especially when you're working in the religious field, if we'll call it that.
Yes.
How do we break out of this feeling like a rut or a religion and have it be something that gives you life rather than saps life and money from you?
Love that.
Well, since Ryan had a follow-up commentary on mine, I have that follow-up commentary.
All right, go for it.
But I think that you nailed it as far as, from an onlooker's perspective. You very much have that kind of like, well, what if we did it this way? What if we tried this? Oh, what about this? The kind of thing that excites people and motivates people to try something differently, try something new, venture down new paths that God might have us go down. And I think it's a kind of like an inspirational leadership type of spark, but also the joy. You bring the joy and the fun and the life and the energy to whatever situation you get into, whether it's riding bikes in Santee yesterday with our
electric bikes yesterday. It was so fun.
Or sitting in a backyard talking about what Jesus' words really mean at that time and what they mean at this time. And that brings me to another thing that I think you're great at, is teaching, So this podcast now is about Ryan and Cody affirming each other.
Let's talk about Heather. That's way more comfortable.
But
I'm very proud of you guys, because I've known you for a long time, and that's where I was going to put you on the spot. You did really good highlighting your light, because we have to have that clarity, confidence, and courage of what it is that we're made for. Going back to what you were saying, Ryan, it's like, wait, we were made for something. And one of the things I have found to be incredibly, painfully, heartbreakingly true is the very things that we're made for is often the very things that we get attacked in. And I think that's where I want to pivot. I've known you guys long enough, and I know I've come after you, Ryan, and I'm like, you're made for more. I see you're made for more. I want to see you do certain things, and I want to do whatever I can to be the one cheering you on. Cody, I've come to you and I'm like, you're made for more. I've seen it. I know exactly what you're capable of, or I've got a hunch of what you're capable of. I can't wait to see this even grow. So just even as colleagues, And I know we share that beautiful space of colleagues and friendship, but that's usually what I do with everyone I work with. I can't not have that beautiful connection.
It is you, Heather. It is
Yeah.
you to see that in others and to drive that out of others.
Oh, and I love it. And then I tenaciously go after the false beliefs. And so I will start with me. On the shadow side of success has been those false beliefs, like nobody wants to hear what I'm saying. I don't have the skill set to run a company. I don't, no one's going to want to hire me. These are all these insidious false beliefs that haunted me 15 years ago. Now, as my world grew and I was creating these true beliefs, I'm being led and guided. I have a voice, an authentic voice to offer this world. I'm created and I'm made to do this. I got very strong, like a muscle built, and that's in that confidence space, right? But as my audience went from like whatever 5 clients to now up in the hundreds, so I'm looking at this going, oh my gosh, I was not aware of how the false beliefs had crept back in. So even just last week, I felt this heaviness. I literally went and opened my where I store all these books. I felt this, I opened my cupboard because I have a whole nother coaching group that's coming over and they want my books and everything like that. Super positive experience, right?
Right.
But the heaviness of, oh my gosh, nobody wants these books. I could feel that false belief just sabotage me. The shame even crept in. And I think I want to be so honest about this because I work so much with people all day long and they think whatever. They think either that I've got it all nailed or I've written a book about it, I've got it nailed. And I keep telling people like, I wrote a book about it just to remember and remind myself. And then this really awful surprise of when your world grows, those false beliefs can creep back in, and worse, they're usually attached to the very thing you're made to do. And so I guess I want to pivot there and I want to say, first of all, there's a 2-part question here. What are some of the flags that you notice when a false belief creeps in? For me, I felt the heaviness and I felt the fatigue. And then I want to ask you, what are those false beliefs? So let's just kind of pivot there because I want to step into that space.
Yes, absolutely, Heather. And I think it goes to, for me, what I whisper to myself is you're not enough. You don't have what it takes. And I think, I mean, that is such a common human thing, but it is something that I say to myself quite often, whether you're not getting the results that you want, they're not seeing, it's not selling enough books. It's not making enough money. It's not growing clients or scaling your business. You're not seeing those things. So the message that you say back to yourself is you're not enough or you don't have what it takes. I think I battle that all the time. So often people too that battle that are voracious learners and readers. I know that I am always learning and I'm always reading and I'm always seeking for new inspiration because I feel like I may dry out. Right. Oh, and as a teacher, like for you have so many of your audience, Heather, leaders, teachers, all teachers are leaders. My wife is a teacher, as you know. And what if you dried out a material and didn't have anything else to teach? What if you found yourself irrelevant and not showing up with anything on your plate to give to others? And then what's your identity? So all of that, those are the questions that I have for myself all the time. So here's the thing, that this is the false belief in that I believe on my own, if I was separate from, a God that gives me content, a God that makes you the content for others. I feel like I have to keep shoveling my plate and filling up my plate before I fill others. And that will burn you out. That will absolutely burn you out if you feel like you're the one showing up with everything to make others' lives better. And I feel like we as leaders, especially for your leader crew that's listening, servant leadership is about showing up the intentionality of what can you do for others?
Mm-hmm.
Not only what can you do for your clients, but what can you do for the people that are under your leadership? How can you
Mm-hmm.
better them? Right.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is, in the morning, that leader may wake up and go, I don't even know how to better myself. How can I better others? And that comes to those false beliefs that want to steal our confidence, our courage, and everything. That's where I think that the cooperation, just to put faith in a C word, is cooperation.
We keep going. Compassion. There's a lot of C words, huh?
Totally. But I guess the reason why I went to cooperation is there's a humility that goes, okay, God, I don't have what it takes, but I want to cooperate with a God who does have what it takes and actually has the eyes to see what others need to hear or see or have so that they can live into the life that they're made for too. So there's a humility in just giving up that self stuff and go, look, it's not about me. It's not what I show up for. It's about cooperating with a God who does have all it takes and welcomes us into a journey of that. It kind of answers one of your questions there.
I love it. And you said the phrase, it's something I say a lot to myself. And I guess that's where I want to go there because I'm trying to break that pattern myself. Where I don't hear how terrible I'm talking to myself, but I feel whatever, exhaustion or shame or just wanting to check out or wanting to go get lost in Netflix.
Heather, where does that, sorry to interrupt, but where does that come from for you? Was there a voice that spoke into your life early on that set that frequency, that tuned in radio station that makes you question yourself in that way?
Oh yeah, totally. And I think that's what I had to learn is the very life that I was made for. There is a force that is for you and there is a force that is against you. And the very life that I was made for, which was to teach and to create really these powerful spaces for people to break patterns and to go after new clarity, new confidence, new courage, and to go after a connection even with their divine creator. All of that was like, no, you don't really have that. Nobody wants what you're offering. And so that is the false belief that I have to really pay attention to. And I notice it with different flags that are happening in my life. And I will say, yes, of course there was a force against it. There still is today a force against it. And I think that's where I want to say, I think we'd be naive. If success and moving into the life you're made for was super easy, wouldn't we all be doing it? I want to tell people there's a shadow side to success. There's a shadow side to going after the life you're made for. You will encounter an opposition out there. You can call it whatever you like, but there's a force against us. And I think that's where I want to just acknowledge. That's why I say we have false beliefs that we have to grapple with, and they sneak up on us. And I think that's where I want to get really concrete too. What do we do about it? For me, man, I went down and I sat down and I wrote down my false beliefs. And because I'm super smart and I'm really creative, I don't just have one. I've got like 15 or 20 tumbling out of me. But I had to see it on paper. I had to write down all the false beliefs. And then I had to kind of put a big X through it. And I'm like, what is my true belief? What is a true belief that I reach for? It's always I'm being led and I'm being guided. This is the life I'm made for. And I move into Psalms 23. I move into that. But because this is something that is like creeping up again, I needed more. So one of the spaces that I sit in is really going back to ancient teaching, ancient wisdom. I love scripture. And right now I'm sitting in this space of 1 Corinthians 2 that literally talks about ancient wisdom that comes from God.
Yes, I don't want the mind of Christ.
Yes, right? I don't want my wisdom. I want an ancient wisdom that is beyond me and my little small human finite. And again, it takes all the pressure off. I have to come up with something relevant. I have to be relevant. I'm like, no. I'm connected to, and this is another visual I love in John 15, I'm connected like a branch to the vine. And the vine is the one that is pushing all this power and surging it through me. I just got a little turned around, a little sideways thinking, oh, I'm the vine. I'm not the vine. Thank God I'm not the vine.
Totally. In fact, we just had a conversation in Common Good a couple weeks ago just about the reluctant leaders of Scripture. I think oftentimes when we think of those most connected with the divine, those leaders, we think that they were from the very beginning all in and showing up with these great gifts and skills.
Yeah.
And we forget, though, that there were many that were like, oh, not me. Please, God, someone else. Like, I can't talk. I can't lead. Take my brother. I'm unclean. Those are all phrases of reluctant leaders, because God invited them into something and they then looked at themselves and said, I don't have what it takes. When what you're talking about is that God invites you into something and then says, I'm going to give you what it takes. I see more in you than you see in yourself. And maybe that's what a lot of people need to hear too, and be reminded of whenever they're listening to it, is that God believes more in you than you believe in yourself, sees more in you than you see in yourself. And then says, when you show up to live what the life that you're made for, I'm also going to give you the energy, the content, the drive, for you to be the fruit you are, because you're attached to the vine who made you, and I'm so good to go to the vine and the fruit.
Yes. Love that. All right, Cody, you've been listening. You've been quiet. I'm pivoting over to you.
I've been, oh, I'm loving it. So I always see how you push your guests to answer tough questions. And now that I'm on the receiving end of it, I'm like, oh gosh, you can turn it into a therapy session. But yeah, the false beliefs are it's very difficult to overcome that. So I'll start with, kind of where your question was with the false beliefs, and I'll probably land in a similar spot than where you guys have landed. But yeah, I would say, like, just for example, like with music, I've been writing songs since I was probably like 17, 18. I've been writing good ones since I was probably about 21. But just the fact that I'm able to say, like, I've been writing good ones, there's a time that I would have never even let that escape from my mouth, because you're so critical of your own work, right? And no matter how far you progress, you can always find something wrong with it. And that's for music, for me, like, even I've been doing the worship music for Uncommon Good lately. And I kind of resisted doing worship music for a long time, because I'm like, I don't have like a worship leader voice. I've got like a folksy pub Bob Dylan-y voice. I can't lead worship, like, I'm not a worship leader. And that's like that false belief that kind of kept gnawing at me. And then, you actually do it and you're like, I actually can do this. And so the false belief is like, no, you can't sing worship music, or you can't sing at all, because I've had that false belief as well.
Yeah.
And then you trade to the true belief, which is like, actually, yeah, maybe I have some things I need to work on, sure, but I can do this really well. I can sing these songs really well. I can write these songs really well. And I've been, again, what we were talking about earlier, I've been given something to say and some skills to say it. So I have this responsibility to actually do it. Not a responsibility that feels like, like it's chained to me, like it's a yoke on my back or anything like that, but a responsibility to actually, the thing that I've been given to say, whether it's you writing a book, Heather, whether it's Ryan teaching, whether it's me playing music, you've been given something to bring to the world, and you have that responsibility to bring it. And then, man, going back to some of what we were talking about with the reluctant leader at our recent gathering, we also talked about including a song, which we ended up not doing, called You Say by Lauren Daigle, which is, people have opinions about Lauren Daigle, whatever, I don't care. It's a good song. And the whole idea of the song is exactly what you talk about in your book all the time. what's the false belief that I am saying about myself? What is
Mm-hmm.
the thing that I'm believing that is not right about me?
Mm-hmm.
And what is the truth?
Mm-hmm.
And from, the perspective of that song and perspective of people of faith like us, the truth is, what does God say about me?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so for me, uh, belief is a huge part of undoing false beliefs, beliefs in
Mm-hmm.
my higher power,
Mm-hmm.
beliefs in the way God created me, um, and my faith in general is a
Mm-hmm.
way for me to combat those false beliefs that, like you said, who knows? You can call them whatever you want, wherever they come from, but um, but getting at the truth of who you are, for me, it comes from my faith.
Mm. I love it. And I think the reason why I like to be so transparent about this is because I do believe we're made to go after a big, beautiful, amazing, thriving life. You hear me talk about it, survival versus thrival, and that we get to live a life of thrival. And yes, I'm making up that word and I'm standing by it. That's what my PhD
Yes.
got me. The right to make up words.
That's right. It'll be in the dictionary in 10 years.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. And it's this awareness, though, that we cannot level up without addressing our beliefs. And I think this is the thing that I really want to make sure that all of our listeners are hearing. If you are pushing through in life and you are trying to move to a bigger life and you're feeling yourself getting kind of knocked around, I want to say that is so normal. But I
Mhm.
want you to be able to have a strategy. And I want to get concrete here, guys. I want our listeners to have a strategy of what do they do when they start feeling and hearing, and people are saying to you, Heather, you can't write a book. Heather, you can't speak. Nobody wants to hear you. I mean, people will say this to you because you're in the middle of pushing through. You're in the middle of leveling up. This is where we have to dig deep and get into our grit and say, what is it about who I am and what I'm made for? And what is it being opposed? How do I grapple with that in this moment to give me the grit that I need to go into that next leveling up in my life, in my
Mhm.
world? Because it's never done. And I think that's why I want to speak to it. I will say this was my false belief. Oh my gosh, that was a lot of work to write a book, to start a company. Oh, I'm done. I have arrived. Now, I wouldn't say that I thought this truly, but in my heart of hearts, I was like, okay, I've grappled with those false beliefs. I did not realize the shadow side to success is that they will creep back in and they will intensify, but they will also shapeshift and they will surprise you. And so I
Mm-hmm.
guess I want our listeners to be prepared that I want to say to go after the life you're made for. If you're being opposed, it's normal. What are you doing to combat it? And who are the voices and people that you're put in your life to support you in that space?
That
Mm-hmm.
that reminds me of someone who writes about who are the people at your crossroads.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's it, Heather, because
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes I think we can hype ourselves up to give us the right self-talk.
Mm-hmm.
And on most days that's gonna be great. But you may wake up some days or get to the afternoon or have a high point or have a low point in your leadership. And the self-talk, you see right through it because you yourself are tired,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And no longer is your self-talk empowering you to live into what you need to do next.
Mm-hmm.
That's when the others who see you the way you need to be seen, who see the good in you that you can't see in yourself right now, that see the gifts in you that you can't see in yourself right now. It's the people at those crossroads that need to speak into you and remind you on their power because you have no power right now,
Mm-hmm.
to lift you up. I
Mm-hmm.
love, actually, that just makes me think of the story in the Bible where it took friends bringing one of their
Mm-hmm.
friends on a mat to Jesus to be healed. And then he
Mm-hmm.
looked at them and said, your faith, plural, has made this healing happen. And we need people at the crossroads that carry us. And so I'd ask for any of our leaders, when you're tired, when you are seeing through your self-talk or even doubting your self-talk and you can't be your own hype man anymore, who are the people that you can have speak into who you are?
Mm-hmm.
That right there is the gold.
I love that. Yeah, it makes me think of teaching. I felt called into teaching as a young teacher, but boy, I'm telling you, you might be inspired somewhere around 8 a.m. on a Monday morning, and somewhere around, I don't know, 11:30, you're like, I hate my job. And learning how to kind of ride that wave, but recognize the false beliefs that are creeping in, the criticism you're getting, and then also recognizing how I get to reach out to key friends, faculty member, people maybe outside of the school that's going to help you stay in that space to reach out to those true beliefs, because the false beliefs will come, especially when you're trying to live out the life you're made for and you're trying to level up. It's going to be opposed.
Oh yeah. I mean, I love everything you guys are saying right now. Um, it makes me think of something that a really good friend of mine and I do on a for a while there it was a daily basis, but now it's kind of more like a weekly, couple times a week basis of just checking in with one another. Really good friend of mine who knows me probably better than anybody besides maybe Jen, my wife, and we call each other up like, "Hey, what's going on? How you doing? Um, and what are you trying to tackle today?" It's kind of like a motivation of like, "Oh, we got some projects that we're working on, some creative stuff that we want to be encouraged by." So we encourage each other, but we also check in with like, "How are you doing? Like emotionally, spiritually, life in general." Just so I think a practical step that I'd offer anybody listening here is if you feel those false beliefs creeping in, it might be good, like Ryan said, to find somebody that knows you really well that can speak the counter. Because what happens in those conversations is that we will often bring up the stuff that we're struggling with, and the other person will be like, "No, no, 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 no." That's not you. That's not who you are. Like, stop being down on yourself. And in the process, you actually like you start to say things to your friend or your loved one or whatever that you need to hear as well. So I think it's a really good practice to have somebody that you have those conversations with regularly. And then I kind of want to get on a soapbox for a second, because both of you have said, and I have experienced, people saying you can't do that thing or you're not going to be good at it. And I just think it's really ridiculous that we have had people say things like that to us. Like, I think it's utterly ridiculous that somebody has told you, Heather, that you can't write a book, that you can't speak. Nobody wants to hear what you have to say.
I'm not allowed to lead either. I've been told that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I call myself a leadership coach. It was a little bit of my feistiness into the world going,
yeah,
you say I can't lead because of the religious constraints? Oh, I'm going to be a leadership coach. That's my true belief, that I knew I was getting my life that I'm made for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just say, like, first, for everybody listening who's experienced that, be careful who you let speak into your life. And if there's voices like that don't really know you, but just have some sort of agenda of why they want you pushed down or whatever, those aren't voices you should be listening to. I know it's kind of hard to discern sometimes, because I've had people who I looked up to and that were in leadership over me that said things like, "You're not really good at music." Like, I'm like, but my soapbox is like, we have an endless amount of encouragement that we can give people. Why would we choose to tear down somebody when they're going after something that they think they should do? Even if you have a strong opinion about that, like, if the person's not going to do it, let them fail, like, so to me, it's ridiculous that that anybody would tear somebody down that way. So if you are somebody who's going after something, be careful who you listen to, who you let speak into that. If you are somebody that sees someone else going after something and you think, maybe they won't be able to do it, just keep that to yourself, please.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up. I mean, that's why I end every post with, I'm cheering you on, because I am unapologetically cheering every single human on to go after the life they're made for. And you talk about core beliefs. There's an old Latin term, imago Dei. I truly believe imago Dei stands for image of God. I believe every human being that walks this earth has and holds the image of God within them. And there's so much goodness and love and light in there. No matter how mean they start maybe acting toward one another, it's still in us. So why not be a part of calling that out? Why not be a part of trying to grow that and cultivate that? And to that end, I've also seen people get really stuck in, they're looking for who is out to get them. And I want to say, oh, gently turn your gaze. Get good at looking for the people that are for you. And I'm saying this with some of my fingers pointing back. I mean, a couple of years ago, I went to an event. I had 2 men boycott my event and refuse to show up. It was a religious event where they didn't believe women should be speaking or leading on the stage. So it was known to me. That's so not fun to walk into. To get up on stage when here I am like cheering you on. I'm like, not only are they not cheering me on, they're like boycotting my event. You got to be kidding me. But I thought, you know what, Heather, you can get really good at looking for those people, and they're out there and you're going to find them. But let's get really good at the Codys and the Ryans who are out there and believe so much in you and what you're doing, and all these other amazing people. And it helps me be able to shift my gaze because, again, as your world grows, you're going to have more people who are going to have opinions on your life. And to have that really sacred space, whether it's people you hire or who you work with, or whether you're friends or your family, you're very particular. You have to get more selective. Otherwise, you're going to get taken out by these voices. It's a lot because there's a force out there that doesn't want you to level up. And I think I'm just gently wanting to say that, but there's also a force out there that totally wants you leveling up. And exactly. We're that force right now. And anyone who's on my team is part of that force. And everyone has that presence that says, we believe in the goodness of people. We believe in the goodness of God. And speaking of, because we've talked a lot about God, I want to gently pivot over there a little bit. If people are speaking into your life and they're calling it God and it's squashing you, I'm going to let you guys take that one.
Well, Cody's got stuff to say too, but you've already said it. You have been, and I know your listeners have experienced, because every one of us probably have the story, a faith environment that doesn't fuel you up, but squashes you. You talked about the imago Dei, that in the very beginning in Genesis 1 and 2, that you're created in the image of God. And when God saw humanity, he said, this is good. Most faith institutions start in Genesis 3 when sin kept in, and then the institution defines them less than what God created them for, and it squashes their identity with the imago Dei. That is a travesty. And I want to say to your listeners, if you are in a faith community that makes you feel squashed in the presence of God rather than fueled in the presence of God, you need to find a healthy place that allows you to be seen in the beautiful, wondrous way that God made you, with an intentionality that when God looks at you, he squints and smiles and said, let's go and live into this life you're made for, not have you wallow in feeling crappy about yourself all the time. Because that's what a lot of faith does. So faith that fuels who you are is a faith that lifts you up, is so good. It reminds me of this. It reminds me of this verse. And I just want to share it with people, because oftentimes the faith part can feel like a weight in your life rather than a lift. We pray to God to move forward all the time. Get me this career, get me through this test, or help our marriage. Let me move forward. I think God is always calling us to say, I'm not only concerned with moving you forward. I want to lift you up. I want to lift you up into a life that sees higher, further, that sees love beyond just the next step up. So it reminds me of this verse, and this is Jesus speaking in Matthew 11, and he says, "Are you tired? Are you worn out?" By the way, this is the Message version. I just love it. But Matthew 11 says, "Are you tired? Are you worn out? Are you burned out on religion?" Because religion felt heavy then to his audience. Jesus says, "Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take real rest. Walk with me, work with me, watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace." I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. This goes into the ethos of why you wrote Grace Space. God is calling us into a place of grace to live a life that is light and free and fueled by his belief in us, not our own negative beliefs about ourselves.
I love that. And I'm going to let you talk to that too, Cody, really quick, but I have to interject. So you're saying, and here's your two pastors, you own your own marketing firm, all these different little spaces that you have created and live in. But you're saying that if there is any kind of voice out there that's utilizing the name of God that isn't creating lightness or freedom, that's not God?
I think the word is hope. I think if you are in a space of faith that pours into despair about who you are and what is happening, I think what we see in the trajectory of Scripture is a God that is always calling us to hope, that tomorrow can be better than today, that the you that you see now, and you see a gap between who you are now and who you want to be, the God of hope is calling you into that, to say you're not made to do it alone. You're made to walk this with me. So I think what it is yes, if you feel despair from your faith, you need a God that calls you to hope rather than to live in despair. God loves us. This is the thing too. I think a church calls you to sit, just come and sit. And I think what faith does is faith loves you too much to leave you as you are, loves you as you are, and then calls you to the next, calls you upward and forward.
Love that. Cody?
Yeah, I mean, I really couldn't say it better than, I think, going back to the example of my friend that I check in with regularly, and then we'll weave that back to, a relationship with God. But going back to that friend knows me, loves me, wants what's best for me, encourages me. And when I'm being dumb, tells me I'm being dumb. So I think maybe the distinction that I want to say here is that doesn't mean that you're never going to get called out on things that you're actually doing wrong, or that are or say, hey, maybe that's not good for you. But you got to consider the source, right? And when it comes to our relationship with God, like Ryan said, anything coming from God is going to have that hope, even if it's, hey, I've got hope for something better for you because you're doing something that's not good for you. So you need to change. But if you're getting a voice that's just telling you about how horrible you are, that's not a voice you want to listen to. So yeah, other than that, I think Ryan nailed. I think I'm just reiterating what Ryan said.
Well, and I think to go after the life you're made for, you really have to own your own clarity, your own confidence, and your own courage, even about the God that you are connected to. And I think that's the permission I want to give everybody. There is no, like I said, there's no secret club out there that knows more than you do. You get to take this journey to find your creator. You get to take this journey to find your divine connection. And one of the things I taught my kids quite a bit, you might find God in church. You might find him in a bar. You might find him on a soccer field. You never know. You're going to find him in work. You're going to find him in all these places. Some of them are going to really surprise you. And if you're looking for the imago Dei in people, you're going to find God all over the place. And one of my favorite passages when I taught them this of what does it mean to listen to who God gets to be to them? It's out of Galatians. And there's just 9 fruits of the Spirit. And I said, I don't know who knows God and who doesn't. And it's not for us to say. What I do know is that the God that we serve or connected to, there's 9 fruits that we're looking for: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. If all those fruits are growing, you're going to find that really loving connection. And I would say lean into that. And you get to find it in whatever space you're in, whatever relationship you're in. But I want to give everyone the permission that you get to have those 9 fruits, that it should be growing from the people that you invite in your life. And if you're seeing the love shrinking or the joy shrinking or the patience or gentleness shrinking, you get to stop, take inventory, evaluate, get selective. And I taught this to my kids growing up. This isn't about who believes whatever theology. This is about who is showing the fruits of what I believe God is. You just want to get clarity on what those fruits are. If you're seeing bitterness, envy, unforgiveness, hatred, name calling, these are all things I was teaching my kids. I'm like, well, I'm not sure God's really there. Doesn't mean they don't know God. Doesn't mean they don't have God connection with them. It just means that they're not showing the fruits right now. So you get to take a step back. You get to be selective. And that takes it out of that fear that, well, maybe I need to listen to this person because they just said God told them this. And I think that's what I think there's a term being called spiritual abuse. That's what people are hearing. There's their interpretation of who God is, and it's a form of control or shame or fear or obligation or guilt. The way I really taught my kids, I'm like, no, be critical thinkers on who you're inviting into your life that represent the fruits of God.
So good, Heather.
Love that.
Okay, as we wrap up, here's what I'm thinking. The question I want to ask you is, how do you pray? That's a word we use a lot. And in some religious institutions, there's a formal way to pray. There's an actual scripted way to pray. We talk about, I'll pray for you. I want to ask you, what does it mean to you when you think about, this is how I pray? How do you pray?
Yeah. For me, that's been an area of, I wouldn't say struggle, but kind of like, hard to find my place where I fit in with that, because I'm not the type of person that's like, okay, gonna kneel by the bedside, open my Bible and say my prayers, But I grew up praying at the dinner table as sort of like a ritual type of thing that we did. And so I have that kind of tradition. But I recall when I came to faith when I was a teenager. I started going to youth group, and I recall the idea that one of the pastors was talking about, that prayer is just a conversation with God. And so I engage in a lot of conversations with God throughout the day.
Love it.
And I do have my dedication to prayer, and one of my favorite, most richest times of prayers is actually journaling, which I don't do often enough. But yeah, I'd say I'm more of a conversational prayer, and it's more of like a just getting through the day, and as things come up, communicating with God in that way. But I look at it as a conversation, and in a conversation, you have to talk and you have to listen. So I think that part of prayer is actually having some silence as well.
Love that.
Yeah.
How about you, Ryan?
I've been having so here's a fun place of prayer. I think prayer is what prayer is a constant, a communication, a connection with the divine, who's calling you into being a part of his business and being who you were made to be, right? So this constant conversation, I think when you said that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I had the funnest time of prayer yesterday that looked like a run and random phone calls. So in the morning, after I drop off my 9-year-old at school, on the way back home, there's a park. And so I stop and I do a run and a workout. And I'm usually listening to a sermon or a book or music. and it's this back and forth with God as I do it. It's a constant conversation. And like, oh God, I'll put it on pause, and I'll be jogging, mainly walking. Let's be honest here. I try to walk fast so I don't feel bad about my jogging, but and I have these conversations with God, and then I encounter a person, and like yesterday I encountered a person. His name's James at the park, and he like waved at me like till he wanted to talk longer. So paused my music, took out my earbuds, and listened. And I just had this awareness that God shows up in our interruptions, because I was connected to a vine. So right, even the interruptions of your plan and your conversation, God is like, no, this is a sacred moment, right? So I had this conversation with James, and I finished that up, and I'm like, God, thanks for that. I felt like that was amazing. Started on my run again, and I thought of some friends that I hadn't talked to in a long time, and I felt God's nudge to go, well, you have the time right now, call him. So I called my friend Ron, and he answered, which was amazing. And now I'm walking in the park and having this conversation with a guy that I felt like God prompted me to reach out and connect with. And all of that was prayer. I got in my car at the end, and I'm like, wow, God, that was an incredible time of connection with you, and you were connecting me with others. And that was such a vibrant, dynamic prayer time that wasn't on my knees, that wasn't in a couch at home or a chair at home, which that's usually where a lot of prayer happens for me. This was prayer in the park while walking and talking with others. And that was awesome.
That is so beautiful. I think for me, I'm listening to you all, and it makes me thinking of the relationship. One of my favorite questions that I'll ask someone, and this goes straight deep to the core, is I'll just say, how's your heart? Not how are you doing? What's going on? And I remember just even last week, I had dinner with a friend, and she was going in for exploratory surgery, and ended up, she had cancer. And I just remember looking at her, and I was like, she was telling me all the medical stuff, and I'm listening. And I said, finally, I just looked at her and I said, how's your heart? And I just saw her shoulders drop. She's like, okay, I need that question. And I think that's what prayer is. And as I was sitting with her, it was me praying with her. I'm finding out how her heart is. It's a heart connection. And when I step into prayer with my God, it's like, here's my heart. I'm tired, or I'm scared, or I'm excited, or I'm anticipating this, or I'm hoping for this. These are all like, how's my heart? The second piece is, what am I hoping for? And as I shifted in the conversation, I'm like, okay, what are you hoping for with this outcome? She's like, I'm hoping that it's whatever, stage 1. I'm hoping that, and I even I'm thinking about several friends who've been diagnosed with cancer lately, and several that have lost their parents. So it's some of this hard, sad side. And then I've got on the other side, people who are launching businesses and so excited about what they're doing, writing books. I've endorsed a couple books lately, all of these. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to, quote, pray for them, but I know how to ask for, how's your heart? And what are you hoping for? Because that's what I'm going to stand with you in. But I want to make sure I have clarity on your clarity. And that's how I'll step into prayer for you and with you. And a part of that too is I'm like, okay, what false beliefs are creeping up? And they'll whisper it to me. I'm terrified. And I'm terrified it's going to be terminal. I'm terrified this book won't sell. I'm terrified, and I listen to that and I go, okay, I'm going to stay with you in that false belief, and I'm going to help you shift it into a true belief. And that's what I'm going to be praying for. So I think helping yourself, ask yourself, how's your heart? What are you hoping for? Steps you into a prayer conversation with God. I think it's also the most loving thing to do, to step into that space for other people, whether they're high highs or low lows, being able to say, well, how's your heart? What are you hoping for? That's how I'm going to stay with this whole space with you, whether it's a hard space or an exciting space or anything in between.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Amen to the faith that creates that space, that there is a God who says, how's your heart? What are you hoping for? What are you afraid of?
Yeah.
Now walk with me and you'll recover your life. Amen.
Yeah. Or what are you scared to be excited for?
Oh, that's
Yeah.
That's a good question.
What are you scared of that you're afraid of saying that you really want? That's another
Yeah.
space I'll step into people. And that's a very vulnerable question. I'll stay and I'm like, what do you really want? And I had someone whisper to me, I really want this opportunity, but I feel selfish that I want it.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm writing that down right now, Heather. So
Yeah.
you hear the typing. What are you scared to be excited for?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as we wrap up, I guess I want to leave our audience with encouragement. What do you want to leave them with? A big takeaway that encourage them in their belief system, wherever they are on their faith journey. And we all agree, everybody has a space at this table. And whatever you call your higher power, call it God, we don't care. We want you to feel like there's a loving power out there and a source that you get to tap into. I guess that's where I want to say, what do you want to leave our audience with?
Yeah. I mean, what you just said is great.
Okay, that's what I'm leaving you guys with.
Yeah. I mean, I think just the encouragement that everybody has a place at the table. And as far as whether you have faith or not, as far as my faith says, like you, there's a life that you have been made to live. I personally believe that is the life that God created you for. Whatever you want to call it. There's a life that you were made to live, and you can go after it. You have everything you need within you, and there's a higher power pushing you forward, and I go after it.
Love it.
Amen. And I think I'm repeating myself. I think I said this earlier, but repetition is the way to retention. So I'll say it again. I think what I'd leave anyone for that's listening to this, whatever their experience with faith is. And sometimes you need people to have faith for you. So even if you don't have faith right now, I'm going to have faith for your listeners and every one of you that I believe that there is a God who believes more in you than you believe in yourself. There is a God that sees more in you than you see in yourself. And I encourage you to say, God, what is that? Where are you? Who are you? That I can have the right people at the crossroads to believe in me so I can live into the life that you have planned for me.
I love that. And I think you keep referencing that chapter. So it's making me think about it, Ryan. And one of the chapters in my book, The Life You're Made For, talks about the crossroads. And I visualize this camping at the crossroads. And there's 3 different types of people that we'll run into. The melters, who are super anxious. They don't like you're unresolved. They don't like that. They're nervous for you. And I call them the melters because they're melting down. And we have the speedies. They're speeding right through it. And they just trying to get to X to Y. And they don't even want to think through it all. But we have whole nother population. It's the pausers. And they're sitting down, and they're going to sit down at the campfire with you. They're going to ask you, how's your heart? What's your hope? What are you scared to be excited for? How can I stay in this space with you? That's what I believe faith is. And that's what I want to offer the world. It's what I want to see each person listening to this to be able to find other spaces like this, other people like this, find the pausers that are not telling you what to do, but are staying in it with you so that you can grab onto your own clarity, your own confidence, and your own courage that you do hold within you, that I do believe is tapped into the Imago Dei that each of you have. So, we are cheering you guys on, huh?
That's gospel. That's a God who says, here's my life so that you can live your life.
Yes.
Amen.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Appreciate it. And we are cheering you on.